Hello guys, this is Saruto Uchiha Storm here and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing What If Naruto Was the Black Dragon Emperor. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 26 Rating Game Interrupted. Naruto's anger unleashed in the Pocket Dimension. Pocket Dimension Observation Room. In the observation room we see Yukine watching the fights with a small smile until a demon appeared behind her. Yukine, what did you find? I ask without looking away from the combat. Demon, we have found the house, according to the records of the Kuo Academy, she said with total seriousness. Yukine, perfect, she said seriously. I want you to keep an eye on her. I'll keep you informed of the result of the rating game. Demon, not to offend Yukine-sama, but is she sure about this? I ask a little worried. Sierzek-sama said that we should not disturb them until the rating game is decided. Yukine, and I respect my husband's decision, that's why we hope that the rating game will be decided, he said seriously. So if Rias loses in the end, I want everything to be as fast as possible without escape opportunities, he said seriously, although inside she shared the opinion of her sister and her husband about capturing the two girls, but someone had to take the initiative to avoid problems with the council. Go and watch carefully, she said, and in the end, she only saw the demon disappear in a magic circle. After that talk of hers, her attention returned to the fight that was taking place in front of her, waiting for Rias's victory. Battlefield Phoenix Territory. Kiba vs Caramine. In the forest of the Phoenix Clan territory we can see the two knights collide their swords. Karamine jumped back and then cut the air, generating a torrent of fire which was quickly extinguished by a movement of Kiba's aquatic sword, which generated another sword in his free hand. This was a one-handed longsword with wings on the guard. As he slashed at the girl, a bullet-shaped stream of air went straight at her, but she managed to dodge just in time, letting the current knock down some trees. Karamine, what a power, she thought when she saw the destruction caused by that air projectile. I'm impressed, she said with an excited smile. I never saw such powerful magic swords except for Excalibur, of course, she said, but suddenly she saw how the blonde's look. She became somber. What's wrong with her? She thought, confused. Yuto, don't you dare compare my swords with that abomination, he said while the swords in his hands disappeared. I didn't want to use the swords that he helped me to form, but I want to finish this woman, he thought seriously, and then concentrate. I'll show you one of my most powerful swords, he said when a sword was formed in his right hand. It was a short sword with a black blade with red engravings and a silver edge which came out of a dragon-shaped guard. His magician was made of black leather with red rhombuses and its pommel had an ornament in the shape of a dragon's tail. Hellwind sword. Karamine, it doesn't seem like a big deal, she said seriously because her sword was much bigger than Kiba's. Let's see what that sword of yours can do. Dojo ready for any attack. Both knights launched against each other. Their swords collided once and then another. Karamine was surprised that that small sword could withstand the force of her sword covered in fire. Every minute the attacks became faster and the sparks flew all over the place. This continued for a few minutes until they both jumped back. For a moment they were silent until suddenly the girl felt something hot hit her hand, which was impossible because she had armor. Seeing more closely his eyes widened when he saw his sword and gloves melted in certain areas, but not only that, his sword also had shallow cuts caused by the wind, and from these cuts molten metal gushed out. Karamine, what? I ask in a state of shock because her sword was resistant even to the heat of the phoenix as well as her armor. How is this possible? Yuto, the name of my sword is not just for decoration, he said seriously while Karamine saw a very thin layer of wind cover the sword. This sword generates a compressed air so hot that it could burn hell itself, he said, surprising the girl. The person who helped me develop this blade said that this sword would never have the power I want to burn all hell, but to burn even the fire of a phoenix, he said while putting himself in a posture. Sorry, but it is a difficult sword to control, so I'll finish this battle right here. By saying that he came out, he shoots at high speed, taking the girl by surprise, who could only see how Kiba appeared in front of her and cut her chest, melting her armor and passing to her skin. More did not finish their tornado from hell. Kiba's sway was so strong that when he finished cutting the girl, a tornado of hot air was generated under Karamine, sending her into the air while being cut by the hot wind inside the tornado. Karamine, screamed in pain, but it quickly disappeared in blue light. Graphia, a knight from Razor Phoenix, has been removed from the field, said the voice of the high-class demon. When Kiba's victory was declared, the boy fell to his knees while he breathed hard and the sword broke in his hand, which had burned in the form of cuts up to the elbow. Yuto growled as he remembered Uzumaki's words. He just shook that memory from his mind and stood up to continue on his way to the enemy tower. Issei vs Shui. In another area of the forest we see Issei, who went flying against a tree knocking it down in the process. He slowly stood up revealing that his clothes had burns everywhere and even some burns on his foot. The chestnut looked angrily at the girl in front of him. No matter how much he tried to use his ultimate technique on her, he could never touch a hair on her. Instead, she was giving him a massive beating without a doubt. Even with her promotion to Rook and Drake's boosts, the girl easily overcame him thanks to her melee combat abilities. Already tired of her, he ran forward and punched hard, but she stopped him with her hand and then deflected him and dealt him a strong blow to the jaw that raised him on the air, where she grabbed his arm and slammed him hard to the ground, making him spit blood, and then threw him against another tree. Shui, is this really the Red Emperor? I ask mockingly. The truth is I'm more than disappointed, he said while preparing a fist of fire. Issei, hell, how could I finish this, he said in a whisper as he saw the girl who was about to finish it. But suddenly a memory came to his mind. I don't lose anything trying if someone asks. I made it up, he said as he began to concentrate his magic on a specific point. When the Phoenix girl was about to finish off her opponent, the chestnut gave her a powerful kick that sent her flying backward, although she landed elegantly. Looking forward, she saw how Issei's right leg had a slight crimson glow which was slowly disappearing. Issei, don't think it will be that simple, he said, although he was clearly tired from the blows he had already received. Without her realizing it, a compressed sphere of magic was forming in the hand of the gauntlet. Get ready, because I'm going to beat you. This will be my last attack, he said, and then jumped towards the girl trying to hit her with the gauntlet, but she stopped him with both hands. Shui, that was pathetic, he said, but then he noticed the smile on Issei's face. What? He didn't finish because the chestnut opened her palm. A powerful current of red energy shot out, destroying a good fraction of the forest and eliminating the girl. Issei, take that idiot who you call useless, he said out loud. After remembering those words, Issei fell unconscious and was removed from the game. Graphia, a phoenix rook has been removed. The Gremory pawn has been removed, he said stoically. Gremory fortress. The three young women who watched the fights only sighed, irritated by what happened. Asia, I didn't expect anything from you and yet you managed to disappoint me, she said while she rubbed her hand over her face with clear annoyance. Rias, at least he would have endured for Asia to heal him, she said with a sigh. Akano, Asia heals wounds, Rias doesn't restore magic, she said seriously. If she had healed him he would just be a dead weight for the rest of the fight. Rias, good point, she said without further ado. On the other hand, Kaniko's fight is becoming more intense, she said, calling the attention of her companions to the magic screen. Kaniko vs Isabella. In another area of the forest we can see Kaniko fight against Isabella. Both threw blows at each other, which were deflected or blocked, and each impact generated cracks in the ground under their feet. When it seemed that both got tired of this impasse, both threw a punch which, when colliding, generated a small shock wave that cracked the ground and pushed them back. Isabella, I'm certainly impressed, she said with a small smile. I never thought I'd find an opponent who could match my strength so easily. Kaniko, I had a good teacher, she was the only answer from him before taking out 4 shurikens from his object holder and throwing them at his opponent, who evaded them with great agility. Isabella, certainly an interesting trick for a tower, she said seriously, but I have faced many enemies that specialize in long-range attacks, she said, and then ran towards Kaniko and threw a blow that was dodged by the girl, but it was only one feint since he quickly kicked her that sent her flying against a rock. Perhaps I'm overvaluing you, she said when he saw the girl come out of the hole in the rock. Kaniko, you haven't seen anything from me, she said seriously, and then took out 2 smoke bombs and activated them. When the smoke dissipated she was no longer in her place. Isabella, did she escape? She asked, a little disappointed with the sudden action of the little girl, but then she felt a cut on her side and saw a blur of speed pass by her side. What was that? She wondered, looking in all directions. The next thing that what he knew was that several cuts began to appear on his body every time that shadow passed by his side. He had cuts on his arms, legs, abdomen, back and some on his sides. Perhaps he was replaced with the gentleman? He thought, very confused and sore from the cuts, but her thought ended when in a blur of speed Kaniko appeared in front of her and gave her a powerful kick to the chin that sent her forcefully skyward. How the hell is she so fast? She thought as he began to fall to the ground. Kaniko smiled at the memory of her teacher and began to concentrate chakra in her right hand, which was quickly covered by a refined layer of blue energy. Kaniko, adamantine blow, said, and then jumped towards the girl who was falling at great speed and dealt her a powerful blow to the belly that made her spit blood and sent her flying through the air, getting lost somewhere in the vast dimension of pocket open past me. She asked while she looked at her fist which was slowly losing its blue glow. I don't think so, she said, and then jumped towards the trees towards the tower. Graphia, the last phoenix rook has been removed, she said, surprising Kaneko a bit as apparently the razor rook had flown longer than she expected, but she just shrugged her shoulders and continued on her way. Observations room. Yukine saw with a smile the victory of the Gremory. She was impressed with the swords and speed of the knight, and disappointed by the performance of the Red Emperor, but she fulfilled her part. On the other hand, her biggest surprise was the young tower. He had skills with long-range weapons, his strength was clearly very great, but his biggest surprise was his speed, which could match that of any knight. Yukine, I'm certainly impressed, she said as she removed the pieces from each side of the board. I don't know how the training Rias gave them was, but it's clearly working, she said as her gaze focused on Rias, who was heading to the Razor territory accompanied by his queen and bishop. What are they doing? She wondered, confused by this strange decision. Phoenix Fortress. In the blonde's fortress we can see how his face is clearly full of rage. He never thought that they would achieve so much strength in so little, and he was regretting his decision. Now Rias's subjects were on his land and his pawns could not use promotion unless Rias declared part of the land as her own, but it would be a disgrace to allow that to happen. It was humiliation enough for her peerage not to enter the Gremory land. Razor, Ubaluna, he said, drawing the attention of his queen. I want you to finish them off, he said, and the woman smiled arrogantly. Ubaluna, as you order, my lord, she said, and then left the fortress and flew towards the first tower, First Phoenix Tower. In the forest surrounding the tower we can see Kaneko and Kiba, who met as planned. They both saw the tower in front of them, and the white-haired girl could see the two razor pawns that protected the entrance to the tower and felt someone else's magical energy inside. He mentally thanked Naruto for teaching him how to detect magic. Yuto, what is the plan? She asked while she observed the surroundings. In case they were attacked, will you use those explosive clones? Kaneko, I can't right now, I can only create one with my reserves and the other two were logs with explosive seals and an illusion, he said clearly, because his chakra obviously wasn't up to the level and just making that clone took more than half of his reserves. I'll have to keep training. Yuto, maybe we should tear down the tower? I ask seriously, do you have something for that? I ask, receiving an affirmation from the girl. Okay, let's start. So both began to plan their next move. Yuto came out of the forest in front of the two twins who were protecting the entrance of the tower, which made them stand on guard ready for combat. They both ran at a surprising speed towards the boy, who was surprised for a moment before evading the attacks and creating a normal sword, starting a very interesting fight because the twins had perfect timing and their gloves were made of metal with which they could deflect or block their sword. While that was happening, Kaneko launched several kunai with tags exploded against the tower, generating a huge explosion, but to the surprise of the two Gremory, the tower was protected by a magical barrier. Ni, you shouldn't underestimate your enemy, he said, and then gave the blonde a powerful kick in the abdomen that was quickly followed by a punch from his sister that sent the boy rolling on the ground. Lee, Revel-sama also has a mind like her brothers and prepared a barrier for us, she said as she jumped to try to kick the knocked down boy in the head but was sent flying by a kick from Kaneko, at which point moved, she wondered because they were about 10 meters away from them a few seconds ago. Kaneko, that barrier is a problem, she said as she stood in front of Yuto so that he could stand up, but she noticed that his right arm was burned and full of deep cuts that were also burned. What happened to your arm? Yuto, it was one of my swords, he said seriously, too strong and my body didn't receive it, he said seriously and looked at the barrier. Kaneko, do you think she can break the barrier? She asked as she got into a fighting stance and her fingernails grew a little longer. Yuto, I can't burn concentrated magic, he said seriously. With that sword in my current state, the only thing I would achieve would be to burn myself, although I think I have a sword capable of going through it. Kaneko, well, I'll take care of the twins, you prepare whatever is necessary, she said before running towards the two sisters and launching a blow that both deflected by kicking Kaneko's fist towards the sky. Ni, don't be arrogant girl, she said with a smile, we can be pawns, but we have disturbed like crazy to be as strong as a tower. Lee, prepare to lose Gremory, she said, and so both launched quick but synchronized blows which to her surprise Kaneko deflected with her own blows, surprising the girls for the speed she had. What kind of tower is this? Neither was ever able to deflect our combined blows, and every time our blows connect my bones tremble. She is strong, she thought as she and her sister increased the speed of their attacks, but the girl kept up with them without problems. On the other hand, Kiba was focused on forming the next sword. It was one of his latest acquisitions, therefore it was very difficult to materialize and also to control, and it will surely have some repercussions on his body, although for a second he took the delicacy to see to her partner and was surprised by the speed with which they moved, and not only only she but also the young women she was facing were matching that speed. Yuto, now is not the time. Concentrate, he said, and slowly his new sword began to form in his hand. The sword, although it seemed quite fine due to its decorations and materials, was not complete. Naruto made it clear to him that the materials and the current form would not be able to withstand his best attack or last in a prolonged battle. Firestorm sword, he said seriously when it fully formed. Yuto, it's my first and only three-element sword and I hope it's enough. I thought seriously, and suddenly the sword was surrounded by a wind drill which was surrounded by powerful blue flames and then covered by lightning. This is my best attack, he said while slowly the left half of his body began to fill with cuts and burns as well as some rays passing through his body demonstrating the instability of the weapon. He quickly got into the potion and ran towards the tower with all his might. As fast as he could, leaving in his wake fissures created by blades of wind and small fathoms burning the ground. He braced himself and when he was in front of the tower he gave it a powerful rapier, piercing firestorm. When Kiba's sword made contact with the barrier, blades of wind and fire flew in all directions and currents of lightning moved frantically through the field which forced Kaneko and the twins to end their little confrontation and move back to avoid being damaged by the attacks that flowed from the unstable sword. Kaneko, although impressed, saw with concern how cuts and burns began to cover her partner's entire body. More her attention was focused on her enemies who were running against Kiba to try to stop him. The girl, along with the fingers of her hands as if it were a knife, her claws acquired a thin layer of chakra and then she disappeared at high speed, appearing right in front of the twins who were stunned. Kaneko, demon cat style, she said with total seriousness and then disappeared in a blur of speed. The next thing the sisters saw was a shadow move in different directions around them before seeing Kaneko reappear just behind them, 100 flashing scratches. When those words left her mouth a large number of cuts opened up on each twin's body. There wasn't even a cry of pain as they disappeared right after that. Graphia, 2 pawns from the Phoenix clan have been removed, said the game judge seriously. Not a second after that statement the barrier exploded sending Kiba flying, but he was stopped by Kaneko. The girl saw with concern the critical state of her partner because his cuts were quite deep and his burns ranged from the 2nd to the 3rd degree. He even had small spasms from the electricity that passed through his body. Yuto, this was worse than I expected, he said with clear fatigue. Maybe I should have saved that attack for another more important moment. You'll have to continue alone from here, Kaneko, I'll order it from you, he said, and then disappeared. Graphia, Knight Gremory has been withdrawn, she said without further ado. Cyrus, it's a shame, said the knight as she left the tower. I wanted to show my superiority against the knight, but I'll have to settle for you, she said as she pointed at Kaneko with her great sword. Kaneko stood up ready for combat and thanked Naruto for training her so brutally because if she wasn't exhausted right now, she also thanked whatever deity was helping her keep her demonic power intact so far and would only have used chakra throughout this match. After that she was ready to attack, but she saw how a small ball of fire fell in front of her and then exploded with force, leaving a large crater in the place. Yubaluna, ha, how pathetic, said the woman as she flew high without noticing that Kaneko hadn't been removed. I can't believe that these insignificant insects have managed to get this far. Cyrus, we're going for the missing rats, she said as she began to fly to the Gremory ground, but he didn't fly a meter when a branch passed by his side. What, he said and then looked back and his eyes widened when in a cloud of smoke Kaneko came out pointing at him with a seal that was stuck on his palm like demons. It's just that it didn't end because a magic circle surrounded the seal and Kaneko spoke. Note, for those who don't understand this part, Kaneko doesn't have many chakra anymore as he has used it since the raiding game started, and his reserves are low, so he must activate the seals that Naruto gave him with magic power. That's why his seal is surrounded by a magic circle. End of note. Kaneko, release lightning element. Lightning lance, said, and a large stream of lightning in the shape of a spear shot out of the seal against the Phoenix Queen, but Kaneko was surprised when the woman created a wall of explosive spheres and a magic barrier. Damn, he said just when a big explosion was unleashed in the sky that sent the girl flying a few meters with the blast wave, but she recomposed herself in the air. Although her shirt no longer existed because it had been burned, it was a good idea to ask for this after all, he said while looking at the chainmail shirt that he began to wear under his normal shirt since he started his training. This prevented him from receiving much damage to his body and was also reinforced by some Naruto seals and prevented him from being in underwear, just in case Issei was close. That was also a good reason to wear it, right? That was close. Yubaluna, damn, my hair is burned, said the bomb queen looking at her in the distance. How the hell are you still alive? My explosion hit you? She asked, but only received a foxy smile from the girl which irritated her. She dies, she said, throwing several explosive spheres against the girl. Kaneko returned to her serious expression and was about to start her counterattack, but she was forced to dodge the slash of a great sword, but she still took out several shurikens and threw them at the explosive spheres, managing to detonate them far away from her. Cyrus, don't you dare forget about my little grimoire rat, she said seriously. Kaneko, I'm a cat, she said, so that later a magic circle would form in her hand. Bullet, she said, and several bullets of magical energy flew against the knight, who in quick movements cut them in half. Taking advantage of that, she launched another 4 bullets, but in one of them there was a kunai with an explosive seal. When the girl with the sword was about to cut the bullet, Kaneko activated the seal. Now lose your little rat, she said, and the explosion sent the knight crashing into the floor of the room forest. Hell, he's still in the game. I think I'm hanging out a lot with Naruto-sensei, he thought, and then looked at Yubaluna, but he didn't see her. Shit, I lost sight of her. He looked up and saw a barrage of explosive spheres. He quickly joined his fingers in the shape of a cross, and at his side a magic circle was formed from which a second Kaneko came out, who took her by the hand and threw her away and received the explosions. There is half of my magic power, he said with seriousness when feeling the drop in energy while watching the smug woman that he looked at her from her highest point in the sky. Yubaluna, come on, is that all you have? She asked mockingly. That just means that our companions only became very weak and that's why they defeated them, she said, and Cyrus appeared next to her with her clothes a little burned but without any injuries. Akeno, era says the woman who hasn't moved a nail in the whole game, I ask while appearing behind Kaneko with her funny voice. Look at bothering a badly injured little cat. I think you're a bitch that needs a punishment, he said while his voice changed from happy to zodiac long, he said, and powerful lightning fell from the sky and hit Yubaluna, sending her to the ground and creating a large crater, but it was not heard that it had been withdrawn. Was I too soft? I asked the girl next to her who had a drop on the back of her neck because of the attitude of her partner. Asia, Kaneko, come down and let me check your wounds, she said from the ground while calling her friend, but suddenly a shadow appeared behind her. Cyrus, I won't let you heal her, she said as she lowered her sword with the intention of cutting her. Akeno was about to launch one more magical attack. It was not necessary when Asia stopped the sword with her special dagger, surprising the queen, and the knight who attacked her. Asia's hand trembled from the weight of the blow, but she still endured it. Asia, I'm sorry but I can't let you take me out of the game now, she said, to then deflect the sword upwards and then kick her attacker away from hers. I apologize if this hurts, she said when her hands formed an arc of dark green energy together with an arrow, diabolic twilight arrow. When the arrow came out of the bow it hit the woman's chest and went through her but did not leave any wound. When the arrow came out of her back it was no longer green, now it was red bright and then returned to Asia's hand. Cyrus, what the hell did you do to me? Hurt, she said with a lot of pain as she fell to her knees on the floor. Asia, I took away your magical power, she said with a small smile. Now I'll use it in my favor, she said, and then the arrow turned golden and she shot it at Kaneko, but the arrow didn't go through her but stayed inside her and restored its magic completely. Kaneko, thank you, she said when she felt how her magic returned to normal. Rias, time please disappear, she said when she stood behind Cyrus and threw an orb of destruction energy at her that knocked the girl out and knocked her out of the game. Okay, let's move on. The 4 girls from the Grimoire clan began to fly towards the next tower, but in front of them appeared a very angry Yubaluna whose dress was torn everywhere but somehow her body was totally healthy. Yubaluna, I'll finish this game now, she said, and in her hands a gigantic sphere of compressed fire was formed. Devastating flash, she said, and threw the big sphere against the girls, but she looked in surprise as they didn't even bother to avoid the why. Then a massive explosion was generated. It was so powerful that it uprooted several trees and left a crater in the ground. For a moment the queen was confused by the actions of the Grimoire, but when noticing the lack of withdrawal announcements she was put on alert, but it was too late. An arrow of red energy came out of her chest leaving her in total shock, and after a few seconds she felt a shock. In great pain, her gaze began to blur and the last thing she saw was Rias and Akeno throwing their attacks at her. A bolt of lightning hit her from the sky knocking her down to the ground, and then a gigantic sphere of red and black energy hit her generating a powerful explosion. Graphia, the queen of Razor Phoenix, has been removed, she said seriously. Akeno, I think we should continue, she said, and so they all went to the next tower. After a few minutes the 4 arrived at the tower but noticed the great barrier that covered the entire area and extended to the fortress. Rias is quite a barrier, she said seriously. Akeno, get ready, she said as they both extended their hands and 2 large magic circles appeared in front of each other. Both were about to launch their attack but suddenly Kaneko and Asia were surrounded by circular barriers that surprised the redhead and her queen. Both cancelled their attack to try to free their companions, but the barriers were taken inside the Great Barrier where Razor's 2 bishops were. Revel, it seems that Yubaluna was right about the blonde healer, she said with a smile. Mahai, indeed Revel-sama, she said, and then snapped her fingers, causing the barriers to generating lightning that blocked the two trapped girls. Revel, brother, we already have them, she said through her magical communication. Razor, perfect, bring them here, he said with a smile. Let's see what you'll do if I hurt you a little, he said while his smile became a little crazier. Revel, well, I'm on my way, she said, ending the connection. Mahai, keep the barrier, I'll take the prisoners with my brother, she said, and then take the barriers in a magic circle directly to the fortress. Mahai, as ordered by Revel-sama, she said, and neither noticed Rias and Akino's smile. Rias, let's put an end to this barrier, Akino, she said, receiving an affirmation from her friend. Both generated the magic circles again and stared at the barrier. In front of the magic circles a dragon head made of energy began to form. Rias, Akano, destruction dragon roar, they said, and the dragon head's mouth opened and a torrent of red energy with a black lightning shot at the barrier. Inside, Mahai saw with terror how that attack was destroying the barrier, so she began to concentrate more magic on the barrier, but it was not enough. The attack crossed her barrier and hit her completely, taking her out of the game. Graphia, Razor Phoenix's bishop has been removed, heard all over the field. Rias, let's go, Akano, she said with a smile. The plan is going as agreed. Akano, well, let's not keep our host waiting, she said with a sadistic smile. I can't wait to hurt a phoenix, she said, and they both flew to the fortress. Observation room. In the observation room, Yukine looked surprised at the strength that the group of Rias was showing, and although she was confused about the redheads' plans, she couldn't deny that they had a great chance of winning. Yukine, I don't know what's going on, she said with a smile, but I think I like it, she said, a little excited. I wonder if Graphia is enjoying it as much as I. While this was happening in the pocket dimension outside and without any of the high-class devils who served the Gremory clan knowing, the Phoenix family had made different decisions that would endanger the existence of the underworld. Naruto's house. Outside Naruto's house on the roof of another nearby house we can see a group of demons observing the home of our protagonist, preparing for the moment in which they are given the order to take the detention or to withdraw from the place, which what they did not know was that among them there was a faithful to the Phoenix family. Everything was calm until another demon appeared in a magic circle. Demon, Rias Gremory has lost their time to complete the deal, he said seriously, to which everyone accepted without hesitation because he was the leader preference of him. On the other hand, inside the home of the red-haired Uzumaki we can see Rainer and Kalawarner, who are watching a movie quietly. They were not worried in the least. After all, they knew about the strategy that Naruto had made using Rias's strategy as a base, so they were 90% sure they would win. The other 10% is it's only if something goes wrong. Both were immersed in the movie when they suddenly felt an energy signature appear behind them. The two smiled and stood up looking at the place. They saw a black portal open in front of them and a redhead with highlights came out of it, white and mustache. Naruto, damn, that was harder than I expected, he said as he shook his hands and electric sparks came out of them. Sakura, of course, it was difficult, we just broke a space-time line, Naruto said the girl as she came out of the portal. Hinata, what a nice house dojo is, she looked around without noticing the other occupants of the place. Yame, I say it was fun, she said as she left her suitcase on the floor. Did you decorate, Naruto? Naruto, no, it didn't come with everything included, she said while looking at the place, but he was tackled by two people. Rainer, Kalawarner, Naruto, the two said with a smile and then hugged him, which surprised the boy for a moment before returning the hug. Tsunade, I see you're a popular brat, said the blonde as she left, pushing Kaguya's chair. I don't know why I'm not surprised. Naruto, he laughed nervously as he scratched the back of his neck and then looked at his fellow detention girls. What are they doing here? I thought they were watching Rias's game, he said, a little confused. Kalawarner, we had a bad feeling so we decided to go home, she said as he withdrew from the hug just like Rainer. Rainer, we didn't know why, but there was some tension between the Gremory and it had something to do with us, she said seriously. We don't know why, but we decided not to find out. Naruto, I see, you did the right thing by trusting your instincts, he said with a smile and then looked at the girls. But well, I have someone to introduce you to. They are Sakura Haruno, Hinata Hyuga, Ayame Ichiraku, Tsunade Senju, and Kaguya Otsutsuki, she said pointing to each one. They are from my dimension and they were great companions before I got here. Kalawarner, it's a pleasure, he said with a small bow. I'm Kalawarner and the girl next to me is Rainer. We're Detenchi, she said and received smiles from the blonde's companions. Tsunade, the pleasure is all ours, said the blonde with a smile. We thank you for taking care of this idiot in his time here, she said and received a grunt of indignation from the blonde. Quickly everyone was sitting in the star room talking, even Kaguya was in the conversation interested in the different races and their abilities. Naruto was happy that things started well on his return, but things are not eternal. Suddenly, several cries of pain were heard outside, forcing everyone to leave the house, and there they saw a group of 10 demons immobilized by seals that provided them with high-voltage electric shocks, at one point of their hands. Black chains came out from the ground with which he bound the intruders and deactivated the booby-trapped seals. Hinata, what's going on? She asked, a little confused by the situation, but clearly it was an attack. The only thing that confused her was the reason for it. Have you made enemies in this world, Naruto, yet? Wow, you're not wasting your time. Naruto, haha, that's funny, he said while giving her a small blow on the nose which made her blush and take a step back. I don't know why they're here, but I plan to find out, he said, changing his sarcastic and playful tone of voice to a serious one and powerful to then approach one of the men and give him a punch that woke him up and then grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. Who the hell are you and what are you doing in my home? He said with total seriousness. I won't ask a second time. Demon, rot you damn human, she said, but the next thing she saw was a black abyss. All those present saw how Naruto extracted the soul of the demon, obtaining his memories, but the only thing that the scam knew was his mission. Then he returned it to his body, leaving him unconscious for a long time. This brought relief to his companions. Well, at least not he had killed him. Naruto woke them up one by one and asked them the same question and always received the same answer until in the end there were only two left. Naruto, I'll be direct, or you tell me what I want to know or the king of hell will eat your souls, he said, confusing the men and making the girls of his world wince when they saw the horrible head come out of the ground and take out the leagues of demons ready to eat them. You decide, he said, noticing the terrified look of the two men. Talk. Demon, they were orders from the Phoenix family, he said when the demon released his tongue to speak. We were supposed to wait for the result of the rating game to decide to take the Detenchi, but the Phoenix family ordered me to take them in the same way as this. I infiltrated the group and told them that Razor had won even though the rating game hadn't been decided, but I swear I don't know anything else, I just follow the orders of the clan. Tsunade, interesting, she said seriously to then look at the other. What do you know? Demon 2, it was part of the deal, he said, confused to everyone. In exchange for the time for the Gremory nobility to train Razor Phoenix, he demanded that they be delivered to him if Lady Rias lost, he said with fear. I only knowing that Mahu Lucifer accepted the deal and ordered us meet depending on the outcome of the game. Rainer, that little one, she didn't finish because Naruto raised his hand as a sign of silence. Naruto, well, if they want to play with the lives of others, he said while his Rinnegan eyes shone with malice, I'll show them how to play for real. After saying that, the king of hell ate the phoenix demon and Naruto knocked out the other, then he encased them in red crystals of the crystal element and sealed them in a scroll. Sakura, what are you planning to do? I asked, looking at the redhead seriously. Naruto, give a warning, he said seriously. Don't worry, I won't kill anyone else for the moment. This will be just to show who the new king of the human world, he said, and in front of him a portal appeared. Kalawarner, wait, let us go with you, he said seriously. We also have the right to beat them up for selling us to that bastard. Naruto, no, I'm in charge of this, he said seriously. If things get more intense, I'll take you all later. For now, just stay here and don't worry about anything, he said, and then enter through the portal, leaving the place silent. Yame, was it a good idea to let him go alone? Asked the girl, a little worried. Tsunade, he knows how to take care of himself, she said, amused. I'm more worried about his opponents. Sakura, that's true, she said with a smile. No one messes with Uzumaki, Naruto's friends, and comes out unscathed. Hinata, for now, how about we go inside while we wait to see what happens, she said with a smile. Kaguya, do you have sake? I asked, earning a smile from Sakura, Tsunade and Hinata. Clearly the blonde's bad habits are contagious, I could use a drink. Kalawarner, of course, let's go inside, he said, and so they all went inside the house, hoping that the redhead wouldn't overdo it. Pocket Dimension Phoenix Fortress. Inside the fortress, we can see Razor in his throne room standing in front of Asia and Kaneko, who are hanging on a column. Razor, let's see if Rias really cares about you, he said while his hand caught fire. When I finish, they will always remember my caresses on their skin, he said depravedly, but Asia gave him a headbutt that made him go back and without him realized on his forehead a seal was formed. Asia, stay away from my pig, he said with disgust. Only one man can touch me and that's not you. Razor, damn bitch, he said to try to hit the blonde, but he was sent flying against a column by Kaneko's kick, which was released with brute force. Kaneko, did you manage to put it in? I asked while he released her friend from her. Asia, everything according to plan, she said with a smile, and just then Revel walked through the door and hit a wall. It took a long time. Rias, I'm sorry, she said with a small apologetic smile. The girl proved to be quite good with magic. Akano, he brushed me with a water whip, she said with a smile and a blush, and the girls saw how his kimono was torn on his abdomen and there was a red whiplash mark. It felt so good that I had to return the punishment. The little meeting was interrupted when Razor came out of the rubble full of small scratches and a little blood came out of his head. Razor, what the hell did they fucking do to me? He said furiously as he couldn't recover. Asia, I cancelled your regeneration of course, she said as she touched her forehead where a seal appeared which scared the blonde. I'm sure you remember it very well. Rias, this is over. Razor, she said as he created a sphere of destruction. Give up now. Razor, never, he said to then create a gigantic ball of fire but never attack because a great tremor was felt throughout the place. Everyone present went to the outside of the fortress because there was supposed to be that kind of natural condition in a pocket dimension. Everyone heard the sound of something ripping and looked at the sky, and to everyone's terror there was a giant fissure in the sky. Darling. Revel, what the hell is going on? I asked scared until Grafia and Yukine appeared in front of them. We have to get out of here. Yukine, we can't, something prevents us from leaving, she said, surprising everyone. The conversation was interrupted when they saw a pair of gigantic claws made of white energy cross the fissure and begin to extend it. When it was big enough, the creature came out of the fissure showing a gigantic humanoid fox made of white energy and black lines and had 10 gigantic tails. When the fox fell into the sky, he looked at them with rage and let out a powerful roar that shook the whole place and even sent trees flying and destroying the buildings that were in the dimension. Rias, what the hell is that thing? She asked in terror as she saw those scary red eyes with rings and tome. Yukine, I don't know, but it's not good at all. The next thing everyone saw was the fox raising his right hand and slamming it against the ground, generating a shockwave that devastated the forest and sent them all flying. End chapter. Chapter 27. A War in the Making. War in the Making. That blow had devastated everything. The trees were blown up by their roots, the rocks had been shattered and the ground had opened up, forming great canyons that very soon became rivers. A single blow was enough to reform an entire ecosystem. The demons slowly stood up, looking in surprise and horror at all the destruction around them. Yukine and Grafia were the first to stand up, both invoked a magic circle, and from this came the members of the Gremory and Phoenix nobility that had been removed and completely healed. When they saw the situation, they joined their respective leaders and looked expectantly at the red-eyed creature, which looked at them with clear fury. It began to walk in their direction slowly but threateningly, but slowly. She was shrinking when they realized about 10 meters from her location, only the fox's head remained, which opened its mouth and from it came out a red head with white locks and slanted violet eyes that shone with intensity. But what automatically terrified Rias, Razor and Grafia were those marks on his cheeks. Just seeing him made them take a step back. His outfit had changed now, he looked a little more imposing and seemed I was ready for combat. Naruto, wow, nice place, he said calmly as he looked around. I hope you don't mind the improvements I made to it, he said with a mocking tone as he looked at the demons. Akano, this is not good at all, he thought while his hands trembled just looking at him in the eyes. All his anger is directed at us. I feel like I'm going to pass out, he thought with fear staring at the shining violet eyes of the Uzumaki. Yukine, who are you and what are you doing in this place? I asked with a dominant tone while he increases her power to intimidate the young man in front of her, but she didn't even flinch. Naruto, oh but what manners, she said while making a small bow. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the Black Dragon Emperor, he said, and then stare at the silver-haired, and I come for Rias Gremory. The moment that statement ended, the place fell into a terrifying silence. Grafia and Yukine quickly stood in front of all the young devils ready to attack. At this moment, Grafia felt stupid for not having slapped her sister to force her to hear her report on the powerful human before her. The young man was clearly in a different league and perhaps they needed the help of the Mao Lucifer to deal with him. Yukine, don't take another step, she said while a red magic circle appeared in her hand. Dark Ice Spear. Suddenly a spear made with purple ice shot out at blinding speed against the redhead, who only moved his to one side letting her pass by, and when he hit the ground a gigantic iceberg of purple ice appeared behind him. Impossible, she thought, seeing how easily he managed to evade his attack. Razor, don't stay, there is no attack stops, he said with rage and terror to his servants who launched themselves without hesitation. You also have to fight your subjects. Rias, he said looking at the redhead, but he only saw her on her knees looking at the ground and without moving a muscle, while his nobility stayed in place except for Issei, who ran towards Naruto to attack him. Grafia, she said when she saw the servants go by, but it was too late. Naruto remained in place without moving a muscle. As expected, the first to arrive was one of Razor's knights, Cyrus, who without hesitation tried to cut him with her sword, but Naruto stopped her with his hand and then destroyed her by doing a little force, and ended up hitting the girl in the front with a finger, sending her flying totally unconscious. The second to arrive was the other knight, Karamine. She created a stream of flames with her sword, but in one movement with her hand from Naruto the fire was completely extinguished. The girl used her improved speed to run around the blonde and try to cut him, but each cut was deflected without any problem. But what frustrated her the most was that he was using a stick of wood to block his sword. Naruto, nice try, he said, appearing at her side, but you're too slow, he said, and suddenly Karamine's whole body contorted in different directions and her armor shattered, revealing several blows clearly made with a branch. Naruto grabbed the unconscious girl and threw her against two little girls with chainsaws who dropped their weapons to catch their partner, but even so the three flew until they collided with several felled trees. They should give up, I just want the redhead, he said, but had to move aside when three launchers of silver ice headed for him and then exploded into giant icebergs across the field. What an impatient Graphia. Graphia, I can't let you get close to Lucifer-sama's sister, she said, while around her 20 magic circles were created. Sharp storm, she said, and from the magic circles hundreds of ice spikes came out. Silver. Ubaluna, monster die, she said, from the sky, being surrounded by hundreds of spheres of fire. Explosive rain, she said, and rain of explosive fireballs fell at high speed on the redhead. Naruto saw the two attacks coming toward him, but he only raised his right hand and the ice stakes turned into the water, which then formed a vortex of water that shot into the sky, extinguishing the explosions and hitting Ubaluna, sending her flying away from him. The water began to surround Naruto, taking the form of a dragon. Naruto, water dragon missile, he said, and the dragon roared as it shot out at high speed, overwhelming Razor's pawns, who tried to attack him once more, but they were all knocked out by that attack. I'll repeat it just one last time, he said with threatening tone. Appearance out of my way. His response from him was to see Yukine shine in an intense purple light which blinded the other demons next to him, and when he disappeared his outfit and hairstyle had changed. Besides that, next to him there were a couple of heads demoniacs. Yukine, I see that I have to go seriously with you, he said in a monotone voice as he slowly unsheathed his sword and then disappeared and reappeared behind Naruto, sheathing it once more. Cut from Frozen Hell. When the sword was completely sheathed, a large cut was formed in Naruto's chest and his blood froze, enclosing him in a large fragment of ice. Something is wrong, he thought, then turned and collided his sword with Naruto's. Naruto, for a moment you surprised me, invincible queen, he said with an amused smile. You are clearly a greater challenge than all those weaklings. Both looked at each other for a moment before starting a fierce sword fight where with each impact a part of the ground froze or cracked. This was used by Issei to approach the redhead's back and hit him, but he didn't even look. He kicked him, sending him flying unconscious while clashing swords with Lucifer's wife. Graphia, don't interfere, she said while two ice swords appeared in her hands. This is no longer a game, she said, and then shot out against the two combatants. The young maid flew at high speed against her opponent, ready to cut him, but to her surprise and that of her sister in the boy's free hand a second sword appeared with which she blocked her attack, this surprising them for a moment, but then suddenly, perfectly synchronized, both began to attack the boy, who with a smile deflected or blocked all their attacks. With demons, all the demons who were still conscious watched the fight from afar. Rias was only on her knees without looking up, while Yuto dragged and knocked out Issei, Kaneko, and Asia. Unlike everyone else, had a smile plastered on their faces. Clearly the Uzumaki's killing intent hadn't even touched them, but that concentration was clouded when they heard a male groan and turned around, seeing Razor on the ground as Naruto stepped on his back. Naruto, funny, right? He said with an amused but clearly very imposing tone. Tell me, Phoenix, how does it feel to have everything that makes you important taken away from you? He said and then stomped on the blonde's back and everyone heard the sound of his spine breaking. Razor, he shouted loudly as he felt so much pain in his life. Mahai, don't touch Razor-sama, bastard, said the young bishop, preparing a spell, but suddenly an invisible force crashed her to the ground, leaving her unconscious. Naruto, silence, she said, and then kicked Razor around and put her foot on the blonde's chest. That power of yours made you invincible, right? Practically immortal, he said as he slowly put more pressure on his chest. I think your family went up in smoke because today they made one of the worst mistakes of their lives, he said, and then stomped hard, breaking his ribs and making him spit a lot of blood. Rebel, please stop, requested the blonde on her knees in front of Naruto. You can do whatever you want to me, but don't kill my brother. For a moment, everyone was silent at the young woman's request. Naruto, tell me, girl, do you know what your brother and your family did? he asked as he reached down and grabbed the blonde by the neck and lifted him up. Rebel, they deceived the Gremory clan to kidnap the detainee no matter if my brother won or lost, she said, and then she felt someone give her a strong punch that made her roll on the ground. Kaneko, I knew that your family would only be problems, she said as she walked slowly to the girl. You're a fool to beg for the life of a bastard like your brother, she said, and then grabbed her neck and put her on her feet and was ready to hit the other, but his hand was stopped by Asia. Asia, I don't think she's to blame for the things her family did, she said as she watched the white-haired girl release the blonde. This unfortunately is our king's fault, she said, and then turned, kicking the Gremory's face, throwing she hit the ground. But just a second later a large shock hit her, leaving her on her knees on the ground. I warned you what that if you messed with my friends it would be your downfall, he said with great anger, enduring the great pain he felt in his chest. Rias. She didn't say anything and lay on the ground. She already seemed to know her fate and she had accepted it without any complaint. Naruto, although I would like to say that I am someone merciful, the time has taught me that those like your brother only bring misfortune to this world, he said while his right hand was covered by a lightning blade. That is why he will die here and now, he said, and was about to pierce the man when an arrow of purple ice pierced his abdomen, causing him to burst into smoke. Everyone was silent for a moment and then they saw Revel give his brother a strange drink that healed him instantly, but he seemed terrified. In the battle, Naruto, so they're not just for decoration, he said as he saw one of the demonic heads return to his mistress's side. Yukine, did you really believe that? I asked seriously, so that then his heads began to turn in front of her, creating a tornado of purple frost that flew strongly against Naruto. Infernal snowstorm. Naruto gave a fist to the air and a powerful air bullet was fired, making its way through the frost and hitting the silver-haired and sending her flying away. The redhead looked in all directions because the storm was quite dense and prevented him from seeing properly, so he quickly made a circular movement with his swords, generating a tornado that dispelled the purple snowstorm, but was surprised to find himself surrounded by a dome of silver ice and several of those demonic heads. Graphiat Yukine, frozen purgatory prison, he said, and inside the dome, all the demonic heads shot ice fragments at high speed. After a couple of minutes the dome was destroyed by large spikes of purple ice, and both were ready to check on the imprisoned redhead, but out of nowhere they were surrounded by a dome of mirrors and in each one of them, there was a reflection of Naruto. Naruto, it was a great strategy I must admit, said all the reflections, but this little fun must end, he said, and then all hell broke loose. The last thing the sisters saw was a Naruto coming out of a mirror. Ah! With demons! That scream resonated throughout the place, terrifying Revel, who looked at her brother, who simply had a lost look and was full of fear. On the other hand, Asia and Kaneko were huddled away from Rias. Both had small red rays covering their body and they were clearly in great pain. Yuto was staring at the dome of mirrors and Akano was wiping Rias's face a little, who was just staring blankly. Suddenly they all saw the mirrors explode and Yukine flew past her until she collided with a from the destroyed walls of the fortress. They all looked in the direction of the dome and only saw Naruto walking towards them while dragging Grafia by the neck of her dress. When he stopped in front of them he shot the woman in front of Rias. Naruto, look up, he said with a demanding tone, and as he ordered she looked at him. You know that all this happened because of you, right? He said and received a nod from the redhead, and then with his hand, he stopped Yukine's sword which it broke upon contact with her skin. Stay on the ground, he said, so that later an invisible force crashed the woman to the ground but she remained conscious. You are certainly impressive Yukine Lucifig, he said, and then looked at Rias once more, and then I grab her neck and force her to her feet. Akano, Naruto, please wait, she said, trying to avoid a tragedy, but just with a look she made the words slip out of her mouth. Rias, you can do what you want with me but stay away from them, she said with a weak and submissive voice. Naruto, why should I ask seriously? You sold two important people to me in exchange for a few days, he said, and then tightened his grip a little more. Maybe I should take them away from you, he said, and only saw the redhead shed tears. Yukine, bastard, she said as she grabbed the Uzumaki's leg. Let go, she said, but suddenly the pressure on her body grew bigger and she sank to the ground being unconscious. No one else said anything, everything was silent. Naruto looked the redhead in the eyes for a moment and then spoke. Naruto, you used my friends as a simple expendable object in exchange for more time to train, he said seriously, even knowing that if you lose they would be delivered to that damn bastard, he said, and suddenly everyone saw how Rias grunted in pain when something it began to be engraved on her neck. Congratulations Rias, you are free from your commitment to Razor, he said, and then released her, revealing a seal. From now on you are mine Rias, that is your punishment for playing with the lives of others. After that everyone was silent. Rias's servants just stayed silent while their king was marked and without raising a single objection until suddenly everything turned black and everyone fell unconscious. 1 hour later, A magic circle opened in the pocket dimension and Sirzek came out of it accompanied by his father and the leaders of the Phoenix clan in addition to a total of 20 guards. An hour ago they had lost all ability to enter the dimension and they worried too much. Upon entering, the first thing they noticed was the clear natural disaster around them. Seeing the state of the place, they looked for their relatives, and they did not have to look much because before them was a scene that left them in a total state of shock. 3 wooden pillars with 3 women hanging. In the center was Rias with her lost look and a mark on her neck. On the right was Graphia with her body full of cuts, her hair loose and totally unconscious, and on the left was Yukine. His battle suit was ripped apart. His hair was loose and messy. He had blood pouring out of the side of his head, and his broken sword was stuck right above his head. This in itself was the biggest shock for the Gremory family, but the scene did not end there because right in front of the pillars there was a wooden throne where a redhead with white strands sat who looked at them with a fierce look, and in front of him just at his feet all the members of the nobility of Rias and Razor were unconscious and the blonde was crucified on the ground with some strange black metal bars. This left everyone in complete shock, especially the Phoenix, because their son was not healing of the wounds on his body. Naruto, welcome Mao Lucifer, he said with a mocking smile, you and I have to talk. End chapter.